I've seen both episodes so far of House of Dragon, and I've seen both episodes so far of the Ranks of Power. I'm very sorry to say, and House of Dragon is leaps and bounds ahead of the Rings of Power. Like there is absolutely no comparison whatsoever.
It visually looks so much better. And I mean, like I said, I haven't seen Rings of Power, but I was, and I'll say this: when I first saw some of the stills months ago that we all saw in that Variety piece that was starting to promote Rings of Power, I'm looking at this and I'm going, wow, some of the photography is really beautiful. The way that they did this with the lighting, but unfortunately, as good as those stills were, like, and I think it was actually Annie Leibovitz that did it, which no surprise is how good those look. None of that seemed to have actually translated into the cinematography, or very little of it from what I've actually seen. And that was really disappointing. Whereas House of the Dragon looks like we expect Game of Thrones to look. It has that same color grading. It has that same visual appeal, that same aesthetic, as far as the cinematography goes. And it's fun to watch, and it's a good story.
Rings has this weird shifting back and forth between being really luscious to obvious scenes done on a set, which look no better than Babylon 5, where you've got stuff on the side and suddenly you have this flat concrete floor. Where the fuck did that come from?
Yeah.
And I don't know how you do that with $1 billion budget.
No, I don't know
no
how. And then there's other things that work really, really, really well. I mean, I can get into my review of the show when you want me to.
Yeah, let's do it now. But first, everyone, we are about to go through the nitty-gritty of the Ranks of Power. This is very, very painful for us all. So please smash that like, help share the stream so that more people get to revel in our suffering.
That 30-second intro that's been all over Twitter, that was painful. That was enough. That's all I needed to see. My God.
That wasn't the intro to the show, though.
Yeah,
it's
that
not
was
the
just a glamour shot thing.
Yeah.
That looked terrible.
It did, and the actual intro is so generic that it's not much better. I mean, that's like a Game of Thrones ripoff, only worse. But script. Let's begin with you with your thoughts on. No, actually, let's begin with the one who has the shortest thoughts on this. Tom, tell us about your experience with the Rings of Power.
I saw the best version of this show than anybody else. I don't know why everybody has such a problem with it. I mean, sure, there were some issues in the beginning. I thought there was a lot of telling us and not showing us of things we would rather probably see than this show. But then about the point where Elrond goes giddy over being bestest buddies with Galadriel, the show got really good because I turned it off and I put on another movie and watched that instead.
He watched Hairspray.
Yeah.
No, actually, I watched Space Truckers, but Dennis Hopper movie. Vernon Wells is in it.
Tom's recommendation: start watching Rings of Power, switch it off, and watch something else instead. That way, Rings of Power is actually really, really good. So that's Tom's recommendation right there. But script, you did not switch off the Rings of Power. You probably saw both episodes back to back, just like, or maybe you saw them one day after the other.
No, I saw them back to back this morning. I finished it about 10 minutes before you started the show. It is brutal. I don't know what it is they're trying to tell. The things that they set up don't seem to have any weight to it. Which is the things, and some of the things that they do set up that has no weight, you know exactly the twist that they're going to reveal later. Like, for instance, who's that kid's father? Oh, geez, I wonder if it's the elf, because he's the only human there that has a tan in a bleak environment. It's basically they pepper a bunch of ideas without conveying to the audience that they know that they're fully formed. That's my understanding of it. It's like, oh, we're going to start these 4 or 5 storylines at the same time, and they're going to be very disconnected. And then eventually, maybe after the season they'll come together at a head like a screwball comedy would. But a screwball comedy is far more better crafted than this. It has to be in order for it to work.
Well, the reviews have already kind of given away it's going to lead up to like an Avengers kind of thing with all the characters coming to converging at one point.
Yeah, fantastic. An Avengers level event of this, just what we needed.
But
we don't know who the other characters are yet.
We don't know who the other characters are. They don't even give us a good enough story with regards to Sauron. Like we knew more about who Sauron was and what he was doing in the original trilogy and the original books. And this one here, he's already attacked and been vanished, and now Galadriel is looking for him. And she's the only. We don't understand the rules as to why, when her brother dies, she takes on his quest. And it's like, well, are not other elves who've lost relatives that should be doing the same thing? Should there not be a pool of these people together, bound by this concept within their community to be on this journey? And if so, why are some of them saying we have to go back?
And correct me if I'm wrong, I never really understood that Sauron had really disappeared, except that she had said it. I watched it again and I went, what? Even the narrator didn't say, and then Sauron disappeared after the battle, never to be seen again, but
they keep finding his markings in various places. And they're somehow able to point a trail, which I don't even understand how they're following a trail of them either.
They and then Sauron was defeated, but was he?
Right.
There wasn't even that. That to me, and then I was annoyed that there was a voiceover to start I went, oh my God, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was talking about, is all the interesting stuff is in the first part. It's a lot of the tell us and not showing us, right? Like, it was just...
The show is better.
I didn't watch... like I said, I seriously shut it off at 27 minutes.
It's a little bit better. I mean, the other part, too, is like that. Galadriel as a child listening to her brother talk about the difference between a boat and a stone. I'm like,
oh no,
that is so. The person who did this probably watched a television show about philosophy and had no other idea of how to actually think or form thoughts.
I have to say, that is possibly the worst piece of dialogue I have ever seen, I have ever heard, I have ever read anywhere in my whole life. And that includes stage plays, that includes drunk people trying to be funny, that includes B movies, that includes C-list TV series. I have never ever
open mic night at a comedy club.
I've never seen any attempt at trying to say something so profound fall so short.
Terrible.
And the payoff for that thing. Oh my God, I'm in shock at how something like that could ever pass through a writer's room.
Well, the payoff was even worse because the elves were the worst setup of any group, in that the elves in Tolkien are majestic people who fight fiercely when they need to as a group. So if you're going to introduce young elves, which is kind of weird because they live for so many years, so that's got to be handled in the right way. But maybe they are rambunctious young, but then all of them, we needed to see what's the parental transition to elven statehood. Like all the elves have a certain bearing. How did they get there? The notion that they are, youthful and
virtually immortal, to the point where it's like you have to create new positions for more to do.
So
I mean, that opening
they
scene
just missed that. That to me was a missed opportunity.
Well,
and then transition to the fact that only Galadriel could defeat the ice thingamahoojet, and like, why can't they have a woman work with men as a group to accomplish something? No, all the guys have to be tossed aside like cheap, dominoes, and then she takes them out faster than your dentist takes out your bite custard.
But the child scene at the beginning reminded me so much of the young Spock in Star Trek 2009 bullying scene. It's like they're bullying her, they're ruining her boat just for the sake of ruining it. It's derivative. It was
It's terrible.
Well, not only that, it was stupid because you get right off the narration of them saying that this is a perfect world. They only know of light. Here's where I was like, this is where you're getting a bunch of tell us and not showing us. Is this show could have started in a point where we see that this, like you said, like this is basically paradise, right? Like a heaven allegory. That they're angels. They don't know anything of evilness. But all of a sudden, darkness touches them, right? You have the situation where the boy, you know, like there's a shadow that goes over him and he decides he's going to destroy the boat. Okay, well then a shadow comes over Galadriel and she punches the shit out of him, right? Well, and then after that you have the conversation and she talks about something came over, something was different, something I've never felt before, and you have this darkness creeping in on paradise, right? It's basically like, you know, we've known good and light all this time, but we've never known this other side of things. And then you start to have the creation of the elves and all that, or where the elves are getting turned into orcs and stuff, and they're trying to figure out why they're disappearing. That goes into what you guys were just saying. If they don't die, then, you know, that's the whole thing. And technically, they're not supposed to die, and that's why George Molo was supposed to be in here this morning. I don't know if he's going to make it or not, but like he was pointing this out last night too. Is a lot of this stuff with the elves is they're not even fundamentally getting into a lot of the things that make Lord of the Rings, like the rules. They're not even paying attention to the rules of what goes on in the world. And at that point, to me, it was just like, I felt like there's no investment in this. And that's why I checked out at that point. As soon as they started inserting these characters, just like, okay, member berries, you know Elrond, you know Galadriel, you know this person. It's like, fuck this. These guys are kind of like hobbits. You know, it's like, this is dumb. This is not even anything interesting that I want to see. You have a big opportunity here where you could kind of give us the prehistory of Middle Earth, and you fucked it all up.
Yeah, that's a nice way of.
But I only watched 20 minutes of it, so the rest is you guys. That's
well, actually, I think that's actually a really good summary of everything that followed, and there's much more details to discuss there. And to discuss that, Paul, you had a review prepped. Let's hear it.
So ultimately, I already mentioned bits and pieces of it. If you forget about Tolkien, as a network executive, if you forget about Tolkien and the investment in that, and you just say, I got to put shit on the air and I got to cover X number of hours every single year, and it's actually better than most streaming stuff I've seen, and it's damning with faint praise. Yeah, it's better than Wheel of Time. And in places more coherent than even The Witcher, which kind of went crappy season 2.
I disagreed when crappy season 1, but anyway, that's me. Carry on.
And so from that perspective, I thought it worked better. Whether it's going to retain the audience, I have no idea. But really, you just got to ignore that Tolkien had anything to do with it, and it's vaguely entertaining.
I have to ask you, as a TV executive, you have bought for $220 million the license to Tolkien's works. And for that price, you have now gotten some showrunners that have given you a series. And remember, you paid all that money for Tolkien, and then you got the final product that the only way you can enjoy is if you forget it has anything to do with Tolkien. Are you, as an executive, pleased with that?
No, but let's say I've been given that assignment, working with the showrunners. I have to take a look at just what they have provided and then do damage control at the very beginning. That was the thing that Amazon didn't do. If this was the show that everybody really wanted, then I would be going, okay, we got to put out this notice that saying this show is light Tolkien. We didn't buy the whole thing. We're only getting some character stuff, and we have to create 5 years worth of 10 hours a year worth of material, and we're going to do the best we possibly can. I mean, I would have lowered expectations is probably what I would have done.
It would have been smart too, because after watching these 2 episodes, I don't see any reason why they needed the Lord of the Rings brand associated with this at all. There's
no, I completely agree with you. Unnecessary, completely unnecessary. They would have been way farther off just kind of imitating these archetypes, which everybody has already imitated.
Yep.
It would have been way cheaper for them to just like call everybody a different name and then go for it. The main story of everyone in this Middle Earth believing Sauron is gone and is never going to come back, but one person, for whatever reason, believes that's a lie, and that becomes their journey, is a great idea for a long-running series. That's actually really...
and that would play into what I was saying earlier with the whole darkness thing, because if you have Galadriel being touched by that, and she's like, everybody's like, oh, he's gone, get over it. It's like, no, I can still feel his presence. Something is here.
Now, right? Galadriel is, to me, this is my opinion, and I mentioned this in review, is actually the wrong person. In all of Tolkien's work, it's the unexpected hero.
Right.
That is the key to Tolkien, everything that he wrote. So they needed to pick another unexpected hero. Didn't have to be a hobbit or
not a hobbit necessarily, but I get what you're saying.
She is the wrong character because she is heroic and she has powers, which, well, she's not using any of her magical powers inexplicably, but it needed to be someone out of left field that takes on this challenge, and then that's totally Tolkien, in my opinion.
It's funny you mentioned the part about, the whole spending the money to get the Lord of the Rings title to promote this when they could have just done their own show.
Absolutely.
I have been thinking that for some time, honestly. And ever since going back to that, Variety article, that first spread that came out, when they started talking about the show, when they started talking about what it was going to be. Oh, but we can't touch this character. We can't do that character. We can't even say the word hobbit in this show. We can't. And that's when I started immediately thinking, I'm like, is this $250 million rental for just the name Lord of the Rings actually doing anything for this show? Or
I don't think so.
Or I'll put it, let me give you this one then. Has it actually been a net negative? Hear me out. And this is why. What have we been hearing ever since the name Lord of the Rings was attached to this show? It has been constant scrutiny. It has been criticism. It has been picking apart everything because they went after an established piece of literary history that not a whole bunch of people know every single detail about, but a lot of people out there know a decent amount. And for the ones that do know a lot, they can pick it apart in their sleep. And we've seen that constantly, right? If Amazon had just made its own show that looked like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones put together and called it something completely different, they never would have had this level of scrutiny, people tearing it apart, challenging them on everything they've done wrong, because there would be nothing to do wrong. It would be their own show. And
you know what they could have done? So just to, I don't mean to interrupt, but just they could have licensed the Sega Mega Drive game, The Rings of Power, kept the title, just removed all Tolkien, and otherwise kept exactly the same stuff. It would have worked just fine.
Anything like that would have been fine. But I think because of all this scrutiny, because they spent the $250 million to call it Lord of the Rings, they have actually probably really tanked the amount of interest and viewership they may have otherwise gotten just by having their own separate IP that they could grow. They wanted to launch this thing with a bang and go from there. Unlike where Game of Thrones spent, several 2, 3, 4 seasons before the audience really expanded to its maximum capacity. Granted, I know people can criticize the last couple seasons of Game of Thrones. I get it, but that's another story. But for here, I think Amazon could have gone that same route. The problem is now that they have attached everything they're doing to this title, Lord of the Rings, I think it's probably turned off a rather significant portion of a potential audience they otherwise could have been enjoying right now. And when you're talking about a show with $250 million just in naming rights and another $1 billion they're spending in producing these 5 seasons or whatever it is, that's a hell of a lot of money. Amazon could have better spent that buying more NFL rights.
And there's another piece to your puzzle, is because Warner and Jackson own the look and feel of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings movies. They can't use any of that.
Right.
So,
which is funny because they actually brought in James Horner to do a theme, and he can't make it sound anything like his other theme. That's the funny part.
Well,
it's really hard for Horner because a lot of his themes sound the same.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it was, like they ghosted Peter Jackson, and as we pointed out back then, they couldn't work with him because at that point I had heard that there was a possibility that there could be a legal repercussion on Warner Brothers' part. And they were serious about it. They were not going to fuck around on that. That's why they put out the War of Roham. They're not going to lose that.
I think it started off as a Bezos vanity project.
Oh, it was totally.
And then kind of has skidded off the road, but it has given a marvelously large industry.
Who did I say? I meant Howard
all
Shore.
the YouTubers out there. Howard Shore. Yeah.
I remember who did I say James Horner? Yeah, I'm sorry. I meant Howard Shore. I am so
So,
sorry.
I mean, one of the things they did right was creating the Harfoots, which are just basically Hungarian gypsies with messy hair. And
I have to say messy hair is indeed the key word. Like, they were disgusting.
No, they were, but you haven't seen Hungarian gypsies, Andre.
No,
they were gypsies,
haven't.
Tramps, and thieves. Is that what you were saying?
Cher is going to join the fourth episode and sing their song.
Yeah, like literally, they looked like they had poop in their hair and used it to like attach leaves and everything.
All I want to know is
the most disgusting hobos I've seen.
Is Galadriel going to work in episode 3?
I think it could have worked if they weren't using the standard tropes of, oh, only this one person is going out exploring and her best friend is, hey, stop it. You shouldn't be doing that. I mean, as opposed to having Pippin and what was his name?
Merry and Pippin?
Merry and Pippin. They were partners in crime. That's what made them great. And I wouldn't have minded if they had ripped that off here, where the one main girl is quite cute and very good. If the other chunkier girl, I don't know what that person was.
Them
was a partner in crime. That would have been great.
Well, the main one, which is the thing that stuck out to me most of all, which bothered me, is that her name is Brandyfoot, which means they're going to end up trying to tie into some way that her last name, they're going to end up changing their name to Brandybuck eventually, so she can be related to Bilbo and Frodo.
I didn't quite understand her discovery of Asteroid Man. That whole thing is
in Great Gandalf.
Yeah, Gandalf.
Is that what it is? Yeah. And I mean, some of the things that bothered me was when he was screaming at her, and the trees were bending over, and she was just going, "Stop! Don't!" Yeah, you weigh 50 pounds, and he's bending trees with his windy voice, and she's going, "No, don't do it. You're
kind of like the scene in Twister where the tractor's flying around them, but they're not even lifting off the ground or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's and you go, at some point, science and physics really do have to work in your show, even if it's a fantasy. That stuff drives me nuts.